Harper Ellington had imagined 100 ways to tell the man she loved that their lives were about to change forever. But she never imagined this. It was past midnight in their tiny New Jersey apartment, the kind of place where the fridge hummed louder than their conversations, and the single hallway bulb flickered like it, too, was afraid of what was coming. Caleb Whitford stood in the doorway, still in his pressed shirt from a corporate dinner, his tie loose, his patience even looser. Harper held the pregnancy test in her shaking hand. 2 pink lines, clear, unmistakable, life-changing. "Caleb," she whispered, hoping his eyes would soften the way they once did. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, the apartment went silent. Even the fridge seemed to hold its breath. Caleb blinked once, then twice, like he was processing a joke he hadn't yet understood. "You're what?" His voice wasn't shock, it was accusation. Harper swallowed hard. "We're going to have a baby. And 20 fesses in the Kamsi." His jaw clenched, anger creeping across his face like a shadow. This can't be happening. Not now. He began pacing, running a hand through his hair. "I'm up for a major promotion. I can't deal with this." This, as if their child were an inconvenience. A scheduling conflict. Harper stepped closer. "Caleb, we'll figure it out. We always do." "We?" He barked out a laugh. "You did this, Harper, not me, and I'm not throwing my future away because you weren't careful." End quote. The words hit harder than any slap. Her stomach twisted not from pregnancy, but from heartbreak. "Caleb, it's your baby too." He grabbed his coat, eyes cold. "Not anymore." The door slammed behind him, the sound echoing through the hallway like the final crack of a life breaking apart. Harper sank to the floor, one hand over her stomach. The future she imagined evaporated in seconds. And then her phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. She wiped her tears and opened it only to feel her entire world collapse. "I've filed for divorce." Harper Ellington had always been the kind of woman people overlooked, not because she lacked beauty or kindness, but because she carried herself with a quiet grace that never demanded attention. At 28, she lived in a modest neighborhood in Newark, working 2 jobs just to keep the bills paid. A daytime position as an administrative assistant at Willowbrook Elementary and evening shifts filing paperwork at a small community clinic. Life was exhausting, but stable, steady in a way she had fought hard to build. Harper had grown up the daughter of a single mother who battled chronic illness most of her life. Responsibility became Harper's constant companion early on. While other girls spent afternoons at the mall or gossiping over iced coffee, Harper was learning how to schedule doctor appointments, manage medication lists, and cook simple meals for 2. Her childhood was not glamorous, but it wasn't empty. She and her mother shared a fierce love, the kind that grew stronger in the silence of worry-filled nights. And so, when Harper met Caleb Whitford, sharp-jawed, ambitious, magnetic, she thought fate was finally smiling at her. He saw her, or at least he pretended to. He loved her soft voice, the way she organized everything with gentle care, the way she believed in his dreams even more than he did. For a time, Harper felt chosen, safe, seen, but love can blind even the most careful hearts. Behind Caleb's polished smile lived a man terrified of losing control over his future, his image, his perfectly curated life plan. To him, Harper had been a steady foundation he never appreciated, a quiet harbor he mistook for weakness. Now, with a baby growing inside her and the man she trusted walking away without hesitation, the ground beneath Harper's feet crumbled. The world didn't pause for her heartbreak. Rent still had to be paid, her mother still needed medications, and the school where Harper worked was already hinting about reducing her hours due to budget concerns. Dollar in an amo. She woke each day exhausted, her body aching in unfamiliar ways. Morning sickness clung to her like a shadow, yet she forced herself out of bed, pressing a hand to her small belly for courage. "We're okay," she whispered to the child she carried. "I'm still here." But the world seemed intent on testing her limits. Her car broke down during a rainstorm on the way to work. Medical bills for her mother grew heavier each month. And whispers spread among the school staff once Caleb's family began telling their version of the story that Harper had trapped him, that the baby wasn't his, that she was desperate for financial security. Lies often travel faster than truth. Harper kept her head down, refusing to let bitterness consume her. She clung to her mother's favorite saying, "Strength isn't loud, sweetheart, it's steady." Still, at night, When the apartment was quiet and her mother was asleep, Harper cried silently into her pillow, wondering how a life that once felt safe had spiraled into chaos. Yet even in the darkest moments, something inside her refused to break. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe survival, or maybe the tiny heartbeat she had heard only days before, soft, fragile, but determined. She didn't know what the future would bring. She only knew she had no choice but to face it. But the worst storm hadn't arrived yet, because just as Harper began to steady herself, life delivered another blow, one she never saw coming. Harper received a message that would upend everything she thought she still had left. The world around Harper Ellington seemed to shrink with every passing week of her pregnancy. What once felt manageable now felt like a tightening rope around her chest. Winter had settled over New Jersey, the kind that coated the sidewalks in cloudy slush and left the sky a flat, unforgiving gray. Harper's days began before sunrise and ended long after sunset, filled with work, doctor appointments for her mother, and the physical exhaustion of carrying a child alone. But the atmosphere at Willowbrook Elementary, her one place of stability, began to shift. The school's administrative wing had never been glamorous, but it had always been warm, filled with the muffled laughter of children and the scent of dry erase markers. Now, though, the hallways felt colder. People whispered when Harper walked by, their eyes darting down to her growing belly. She knew exactly where the rumors started: Caleb's family. They came from old money, polished, influential, and ruthless when protecting their image. The moment Caleb filed for divorce, his mother had unleashed her quiet, poisonous campaign. She made phone calls, sent messages, spreading the narrative that Harper was unstable, manipulative, and possibly carrying another man's child. The school board didn't confront Harper directly, but she recognized the signs. Fewer friendly greetings, more meetings about budget cuts, concerns about her availability. Her hours were reduced, then reduced again. She could barely afford groceries, let alone the medical bills piling up. The breaking point came one icy morning when Harper slipped on the school's front steps, her ankle twisting sharply beneath her. Pain shot up her leg as she collapsed, desperately shielding her stomach. A custodian helped her inside, but the school nurse, after a quick glance, shook her head. "You really shouldn't be working in your condition," she murmured. My condition, Harper thought bitterly, as if pregnancy were an inconvenience to everyone but her. The principal called her into his office later that afternoon. His voice was gentle, but firm, too firm. "Harper, given your circumstances, I think it's best if you take an extended leave." "I can't afford unpaid leave," she whispered. He avoided her eyes. "I'm sorry. This is the board's decision." The room blurred for a moment, but Harper didn't cry. She simply nodded, gathered her things, and walked out into the cold air, her breath trembling in the wind. The world felt impossibly large and terrifying. She had no job. Her mother's medicine was running out, and she was carrying a child whose father had erased them both without guilt. That night, Harper returned home to find her mother struggling to breathe. Panic surged through her as she called an ambulance. They spent hours in the emergency room, only for the doctor to confirm what Harper feared. They couldn't afford the treatment her mother needed. Something inside her cracked, but not in a way that broke, more like a fault line forming, preparing for a shift. The next day, limping slightly, Harper stood at the window of her apartment, watching snow drift over the streetlights. She pressed a hand to her stomach. "I'm still here," she whispered. "I won't give up on you. Thanks for watching." But as she turned away, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, and the moment she opened it, her heart stopped. It was a photo, one that could destroy what little she had left. The photo on Harper Ellington's screen stole the air from her lungs. It was grainy, taken in dim restaurant lighting, but unmistakably clear where it mattered. Caleb Whitford sat at a polished mahogany table in a Manhattan steakhouse, his arm draped possessively around Sloane Mercer. The woman leaned into him, her ruby-red lips curved in a triumphant smile. A champagne bottle, Dom Perignon, stood between them, like a declaration of celebration. But it wasn't the intimacy that crushed Harper. It was the caption written boldly above the image, posted from an anonymous number. "Your replacement. He says you should stop pretending the baby is his." Harper's chest tightened, heat spreading up her neck. Her fingers trembled as she zoomed in. Caleb's hand, one she once held during quiet nights, rested confidently on Sloane's thigh. He looked relaxed, radiant even, as though he hadn't shattered a life just days before. The worst part was how public the photo seemed. The angle suggested someone nearby had taken it, someone who wanted Harper to see, someone who wanted her humiliated. She barely slept that night. The image looped through her dreams, taunting her. By morning, she felt hollow, her eyes swollen, her body aching under the weight of stress and pregnancy. She moved mechanically, helped her mother prepare breakfast, took a phone call from the clinic, packed 2 bags of discounted groceries. The world didn't pause simply because hers had cracked. That afternoon, she received another message. This time, it was a video clip. Caleb and Sloane standing outside the same restaurant, snow falling softly around them. Reporters lingered nearby, microphones raised. A voice asked, "Caleb, is it true your ex-wife is claiming you fathered her child?" Caleb laughed. "Easy, carefree, cruel. She can claim anything she wants," he said. "We all know the truth." Sloane added with a smirk, "Some women can't accept when the story's over." Harper's knees buckled. She sank onto her couch, covering her mouth to hold back a sob. She had endured gossip, doubt, and abandonment, but this was different. This was public, deliberate, designed to erase her dignity. She pressed a shaking hand over her stomach. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to her unborn child. "I'm trying." But life seemed determined to push harder. That evening, as she walked home from the pharmacy, icy wind whipping against her coat, a car sped through a puddle, drenching her from the knees down. Her ankle still sore from the school, steps twisted sharply beneath her. She caught herself on a lamppost, wincing in pain. For a moment, she feared she might collapse right there on the sidewalk. Just then, her phone buzzed again. Another message. But this one wasn't from an unknown number. It was from her landlord. "Your rent is overdue. If not paid within 5 days, we'll have to proceed with eviction." Harper stood frozen in the cold, breath trembling, reality crashing down all at once. No job, no support, no money, no stability. Her world was unraveling. She limped home slowly, clutching her belly as though shielding her child from the storm breaking around them. Her mother tried to ask what was wrong, but Harper forced a tired smile and excused herself to the bedroom, shutting the door before the tears returned. She sank to the floor, shoulders shaking, wondering how much more she could endure. But just when Harper thought the worst had passed, life tightened its grip yet again. Because early the next morning, there was a loud, insistent knock at the door. And the man standing on her doorstep was the last person she ever expected to see. Harper froze in the doorway as the winter air swallowed her breath. Standing on her front step was a tall man in an immaculate charcoal coat, snowflakes melting on his shoulders. His presence radiated authority, the kind that belonged to someone used to corner offices and skyscraper views. She didn't recognize him at first, not through the haze of fear and exhaustion clouding her mind. "Miss Ellington?" he asked gently. "Yes?" Her voice wavered. He removed his gloves, offering a respectful nod. "My name is Ethan Rowe." That name hit her like cold water. Ethan Rowe, the CEO of the Manhattan Education Initiative, a man whose face occasionally appeared on charity posters or business articles. Harper had seen his name on the brochures for the city's academic scholarships, the very scholarship she hoped her child might one day qualify for. "What? Why are you here?" she whispered. He hesitated, studying her strained posture, her damp hair, the slight tremble in her fingers. "I received a concerning message," he said. "About you. And your situation." Her pulse quickened. "From who?" "I'd prefer not to say yet, but they thought you needed help." Harper instinctively stiffened. Help? From a stranger? In her experience, help usually came with strings attached, or worse, judgment. She forced a polite smile. "I appreciate it, but I'm fine." He looked at her ankle, still slightly swollen, and then at her protective hand covering her belly. "With respect, Miss Ellington, you don't look fine." A small, embarrassing crack formed in her composure. She stepped aside automatically, letting him inside because the freezing wind was too much for her lungs to handle. The apartment was modest, warm but worn medicine bottles on the counter, stacks of bills half hidden under a dish towel, her mother asleep in the back room. Ethan took everything in quietly, respectfully, without pity. "You work at Willowbrook Elementary," he said, Good reputation. I spoke with the principal. Her stomach twisted. He told you I'm on leave, didn't he? He told me the board was pressured to reduce your hours. A pause. By someone connected to your ex-husband. Don't wud. Harper's face flushed hot. Another blow. Another humiliation delivered cleanly, strategically. She swallowed hard. Caleb's family doesn't want me anywhere near him, or near anything that might make them look bad. Ethan's brows tightened, not with confusion, but with a slow-burning anger Harper didn't understand. I know what it's like, he said softly, to have people decide your worth for you. Before she could respond, a sharp knock cut through the room. Harper stiffened. Ethan stepped instinctively between her and the door. When she opened it, the cold air swept in again, along with the last person she wanted to face. Sloane Mercer, dressed in a cream coat, diamonds glinting at her ears, a mocking smile painted on her perfect lips. Well, Sloane said loudly, her voice slicing through the hallway, I can see why Caleb moved on. Look at this place. It's practically tragic. Neighbors peeked through cracked doors. Someone on the stairs stopped mid-step. Harper's cheeks burned. Her chest ached. Sloane stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to be cruel. You should stop lying about the baby, Harper. It's pathetic. Harper trembled, but before she could speak, Ethan turned, his voice cold and sharp. Miss Mercer, I suggest you leave. Now. Sloane blinked, thrown off by his authority. Excuse me, who are you? The man who won't allow this woman to be harassed in her own home. The hallway fell silent. Sloane glared, humiliated, and spun on her heel, storming down the stairs. Harper's knees weakened. Ethan caught her elbow gently, and then he said something that changed everything. Harper, there's something you need to know about Caleb, something you were never told. Harper Ellington had held herself together longer than anyone could have expected. She'd survived the whispers, the job loss, the eviction threat, the photo that shattered her remaining dignity, and now the humiliation delivered straight to her front door by Sloane Mercer. But it was Ethan Rowe's final words. There's something you need to know about Caleb that pierced the last bit of strength she had been clinging to. She stood frozen in the living room, one hand gripping the back of a worn dining chair, struggling to steady her breath. Ethan's expression was cautious, as if he feared pushing her too far. But the truth was, Harper had already reached her breaking point. I can't, she whispered, shaking her head. I can't handle anything else today. Her voice cracked on the last word, a thin thread finally snapping. She stumbled toward the bathroom, locking the door before Ethan or her mother could follow. The moment she slid down against the cool tile wall, the sobs tore out of her in silent, shaking waves. She pressed her palms to her face, ashamed of how weak she felt. She used to think she was steady, her mother's rock, calm in every crisis. But now, the weight of betrayal, poverty, fear, and loneliness had crushed her into something she didn't recognize. Tears dripped into her lap as she curled protectively around her stomach. I'm trying, she choked out to the little life inside her. I promise, I'm trying. But another. The baby moved gently, a soft reminder of the only thing keeping her from collapsing completely. Minutes blurred, maybe hours. When Harper finally stood, her reflection in the mirror startled her. Pale skin, red, swollen eyes, hair matted from tears. She looked like a woman who had been fighting a battle she never asked for, and losing. When she stepped out, Ethan was waiting in the hallway. His posture softened when he saw her blotchy cheeks. Harper, he said gently, I didn't come here to overwhelm you. I came because someone is trying to hurt you, and they shouldn't succeed. She shook her head. They already have. Not completely, Ethan replied. Not if you let me help you. No, she whispered, backing away. Help always comes with a price. Not mine. His voice carried a sincerity she wasn't used to hearing. But trust was a luxury Harper couldn't afford not when she could barely hold herself together. She limped to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and tried to swallow the lump in her throat. Each breath felt heavier than the last, her chest tightening under the weight of everything she'd hidden from everyone, even herself. What did you mean earlier? She finally managed. About Caleb? Ethan inhaled slowly. It's not something I want to say unless you're ready to hear it. I don't have the luxury of not being ready, Harper whispered. Just tell me. Hope. Before he could, her mother's voice called faintly from the bedroom. Harper, sweetheart? Harper closed her eyes. Another problem. Another responsibility. Another piece of her world threatening to fall apart. She hurried to her mother's room, only to stop cold. Her mother sat weakly on the edge of the bed, clutching her chest, her breathing shallow and ragged. "Mom?" Harper cried, rushing forward. The room spun. Her mother's lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Call an ambulance." "You will now?" Harper's heart plunged into panic. And Ethan, stepping into the doorway, reached for his phone at once as Harper held her mother upright. But her mother's next words froze both of them in place. "It's the baby, Harper. Something's wrong with the baby." The ambulance sirens faded into the distance, leaving Harper Ellington standing in the freezing parking lot of St. Mary's Hospital, with her coat half-zipped and her heart pounding hard enough to bruise. Her mother had been rushed inside moments earlier, pale and trembling, her breaths shallow. The doctors promised to update her soon, but that did little to quiet the fear clawing at her. Ethan Rowe stayed close, not intruding, just present, a quiet anchor in the chaos. Inside the waiting room, fluorescent lights buzzed, the chairs were cold, a wall-mounted TV played muted news. Harper sat with her hands pressed over her belly, trying to will her child to stay safe, to stay steady. "Harper," Ethan said softly after a few minutes, "your mother didn't mean something is wrong with the baby physically. She meant something she's known for a while, something she never told you." Harper's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" Ethan looked conflicted, as though weighing whether revealing the truth was the right thing to do. "Your mother told someone she trusted that Caleb's family approached her before the wedding. They offered her money." Harper's eyes widened. "Money? For what?" "To talk you out of marrying Caleb." The floor fell out from beneath her. "No," Harper whispered. "She would have told me. She never." "She refused the money," Ethan said gently. "But they made threats. They warned her that if Caleb ever felt trapped, they'd make your life difficult. They'd ruin your reputation. They'd isolate you from him." Harper stared at him in stunned silence. Every cruel moment, every rumor, every whisper, every carefully crafted humiliation suddenly took on a new shape. Caleb's family hadn't just disapproved of her. They had engineered her downfall from the start. "But why?" she breathed. "Because to them, you were beneath him. A liability. A woman who could distract him from success." Harper's fingers curled around the armrest. "So Caleb wasn't just acting out of fear. He was conditioned to believe I'd ruin his life." Ethan nodded slowly, and he believed it. Completely. A wave of nausea rolled through her, not the morning sickness kind, but the kind that comes when truth rearranges every memory you thought you understood. Her voice shook. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Ethan said, leaning forward, "you deserve to know the real reason your life has been tearing apart. And because someone contacted me months ago asking for help on your behalf." Harper's breath caught. "Who?" Before Ethan could answer, a nurse approached. "Miss Ellington?" Harper jumped to her feet. "Is my mother okay?" "She's stable for now." Her heart rate was irregular, but she responded to treatment. "She's asking for you." Relief hit so hard her knees weakened. She squeezed Ethan's hand briefly, gratitude, desperation, everything she couldn't put into words. Ethan walked with her to the room, but stopped outside the door. "She may tell you the same thing I did, but there's more. When you're ready, I'll explain everything." Harper stepped inside. Her mother lay beneath a thin blanket, pale but conscious. "Mom," Harper whispered, sitting beside her. Her mother took her hand, tears glistening in her tired eyes. "It's time I told you the truth," she rasped. They never wanted you to keep the baby." Caleb's mother came to me again, this morning. Harper's blood ran cold. She said, "If you insisted on raising that child," her mother whispered, voice cracking, "your life would only get worse." Harper felt the room tilt. Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. "And Harper, that wasn't the only threat they made. They warned me they're coming for you next." Harper Ellington stood beside her mother's hospital bed, long after the machines settled into a steady rhythm. The threat Caleb's family made that they were coming for her next echoed through her mind like a warning bell. Fear sat sharp in her stomach, but beneath it, something else was forming, something stronger, something she hadn't felt in months. Resolve. For weeks, she had been drowning, reacting to every storm, every attack, every new humiliation. But now she could see the truth clearly. Caleb's family didn't want her broken by accident. They wanted her broken by design. They wanted her isolated, frightened, desperate, forced to give up her child or disappear completely. And suddenly, Harper was done being helpless. She kissed her mother's forehead and stepped out of the room, finding Ethan Rowe waiting quietly. He straightened when he saw her expression shift, no longer fragile, but focused. "Ethan," she said softly, "tell me everything." They sat in the small visitor lounge, the hum of vending machines filling the silence. Ethan explained how an anonymous email reached his office months ago detailing Harper's situation. Her unstable job, the pregnancy, the pressure from Caleb's family. The sender begged him to watch over her quietly, to intervene if things became dangerous. "I don't know who sent it," Ethan admitted, "but they cared deeply. They feared what Caleb's family might do if they saw you as a threat." Harper swallowed. "Why me? Why would anyone go to you?" Ethan hesitated, then told her something that made her breath catch. 9 years ago, Harper had unknowingly saved his life. "You worked part-time at a diner in Newark," he said. "One night, you talked a teenager out of stealing a man's briefcase. That man was me. Inside that briefcase were documents that protected my company from a hostile takeover." Harper blinked, stunned. "I barely remember that." "But I do," Ethan said. "And when the email came, I recognized your name." For the first time in days, Harper felt something warm push against the cold weight in her chest. Someone had remembered her kindness. Someone had cared enough to intervene. Still, reality hit fast. "I'm about to lose my apartment," she whispered. "My job is gone. I don't know how I'm supposed to protect my baby and my mom." Ethan leaned forward, voice steady. "Then, let me help you rebuild. Not out of pity, but because you deserve better than what's been done to you." His sincerity disarmed her. For the first time, she didn't push help away. "Okay," she whispered, "but I need to learn to stand on my own too." "You will," Ethan assured her. "I'll make sure of it." That night, Harper walked out of the hospital with her shoulders straighter and her chin lifted. She bought a new planner from a 24-hour drugstore, a cheap but powerful symbol of control. She wrote out tasks, call the tenant board, speak with HR at the clinic job, apply for emergency assistance, meet with a legal aid advocate. She wasn't fixed. She wasn't strong yet, but she was moving. And that momentum followed her into the morning. When Harper stepped into her apartment, exhausted but clear-minded, she found her mailbox overflowing. She sorted through it mechanically until one envelope made her freeze. It was from Whitford & Associates, the law firm belonging to Caleb's family. Her pulse quickened. She tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A formal warning, demanding immediate compliance. And at the bottom, in cold black ink, was a sentence that drained every trace of warmth from her body. Failure to surrender all parental claims will result in legal action. Caleb Whitford sat inside a sleek black town car, the neon glow of Manhattan reflecting off the tinted windows. He should have been celebrating. He had just landed the biggest contract of his career. Sloan Mercer had orchestrated the media coverage, posting polished photos of them clinking glasses at an upscale rooftop bar. Everything in his life was supposed to be perfect. But perfection felt strangely unstable tonight. Because earlier that morning, while stepping out of a board meeting on Fifth Avenue, Caleb saw someone that refused to leave his mind. A little boy, a small kid in a navy jacket, holding the hand of a woman Caleb barely recognized at first. The boy had dark hair, a serious expression, and deep-set eyes that matched Caleb's exactly. The resemblance was so striking, Caleb stopped dead in his tracks. He had told himself it was coincidence. He had forced himself into the car, forced himself to smile beside Sloan, forced himself to push the strange tightening in his chest away. But the image of that boy kept cutting through his thoughts like headlights in fog. He finally broke the silence. "Sloan," he said slowly, "did you see that kid outside the building earlier?" "Which kid?" she asked absently, scrolling her phone. "The one standing with that woman, Harper." The name tasted sour in his mouth, a name he tried to erase from memory. Sloan smirked. "You're still letting her get to you?" "Caleb, she's irrelevant. She always was." End quote. But Caleb wasn't listening anymore. Something gnawed at him. Something uncomfortable. Something real. The car pulled up in front of his building. Sloan headed inside, still ranting about Harper's pathetic attempts to stay visible. Caleb stayed behind in the cold air, trying to steady the thoughts swirling in his mind. Later that night, alone in his office, he opened his laptop. He typed Harper's name into a search engine. Nothing noteworthy appeared. No social media updates, no public appearances, no lawsuits. She seemed to have vanished. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. For years, he had convinced himself Harper was manipulative, dramatic, trying to trap him with a baby that wasn't his. But now he saw a quiet, worn-out woman holding a child who looked exactly like a Whitford. What were the chances? His chest tightened. He didn't want to think about it, but he also couldn't stop. In a moment of impulsive fear, Caleb opened his desk drawer and pulled out the envelope he had received weeks earlier, an anonymous letter warning him that Harper would ruin his life. Sloane insisted it was from a jealous coworker. Caleb believed her because believing her was easier than questioning everything. Tonight, though, something felt wrong. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. A single sentence appeared. "If you want the truth, follow the boy." Caleb stared at the message, pulse quickening. Who sent it? How did they know he'd seen the kid? What truth? Before he could piece it together, another message came, this time with a photo. A blurry image of Harper walking Liam down a snowy sidewalk. The caption read, "He looks just like you, doesn't he?" Caleb's stomach dropped. He slammed the laptop shut and stood abruptly, knocking over a glass of whiskey and shattering it across the hardwood floor. The sound echoed through the penthouse like an accusation. He didn't know what scared him more, the possibility that Harper had lied, or the possibility that he had. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a voicemail transcribed automatically. "Mr. Whitford, this is Street Mary's Hospital. It's about Miss Harper Ellington. Please call us back immediately." Caleb felt the blood drain from his face as he whispered, "What happened to her?" Caleb Whitford drove through the Manhattan night with a speed that bordered on reckless, headlights slicing through falling snow as his chest tightened with every mile. Street Mary's Hospital wasn't far, but the urgency clawing at him made the drive feel endless. He'd listened to the voicemail 5 times. "It's about Miss Harper Ellington." The words replayed like a haunting refrain. He didn't know why he cared. He told himself it was curiosity, concern over possible legal complications. Anything but guilt. Anything but fear. Anything but the gnawing suspicion that the boy he saw wasn't just some strange coincidence. When he finally pushed through the hospital doors, a rush of antiseptic air hit him. The fluorescent lights felt too bright, too honest. He scanned the ER waiting room until he saw her. Harper, sitting alone, her hands folded protectively over her stomach, her face pale, her shoulders trembling ever so slightly. She looked fragile, so fragile, he felt something twist violently inside him. He approached slowly, almost cautiously, as if one wrong move might shatter her. "Harper?" he said. She stiffened instantly. When she looked up, her eyes widened, not with relief, but with disbelief. Then anger. "What are you doing here?" she whispered harshly. I received a call from the hospital. They mentioned your name." His voice faltered. "I thought something had happened." Her laugh was sharp, humorless. "Something has happened, Caleb. A lot has happened. You just never cared before." He flinched. That wasn't supposed to hurt him. But it did. "I didn't know you were here," he said, trying to steady himself. "I didn't know there were problems." "You didn't want to know." She stood, slowly, a hand braced on the armrest. "You made every effort to stay ignorant." He swallowed. "Harper, is the baby okay?" Her eyes flashed with something fierce. "My baby," she corrected. "And that's none of your business." A nurse walked by, nodding politely at Harper. Caleb seized the moment. "Please, just tell me what happened." Harper hesitated just long enough for worry to flicker across her expression. "My mother collapsed tonight. Stress, heart issues. And the baby," she stopped, inhaled shakily. "The baby reacted to it. They had to monitor us both." "Well, the minor." A wave of cold dread washed over Caleb. "Is the baby in danger?" "Not anymore," she said. "But earlier, I thought I was losing him." Her voice cracked on the last word. Caleb had no script prepared for this moment. No clever line, no way to pretend. All he could manage was a soft, shaken, "I'm sorry." Harper froze. She stared at him as if he'd spoken in another language. "You're sorry?" she repeated. "Now? When everything is already broken? When I'm barely standing? You think the word sorry fixes anything?" He opened his mouth, but she stepped back, shaking her head. You walked away from us. You accused me of things I never did. You let your family destroy my name. And now you show up because of a voicemail? Her words cut deeper than she knew. Harper, he whispered. That boy I saw. Don't, she snapped. Don't you dare talk about him. Her breathing grew uneven. Her hand rose instinctively to her stomach, protective, defensive, fierce. This child is mine, she said. He will never need you. Caleb took a step toward her. Harper, is he? But before he could finish the question that had begun consuming him, Ethan Rowe appeared around the corner, shoulders squared, gaze sharp. He stepped between them. Harper, Ethan said calmly, the doctor is ready to talk to you. Then he turned to Caleb with quiet steel in his eyes. You shouldn't be here. And 70 Harper hesitated for only a moment before moving toward Ethan. But as she passed Caleb, he heard her whisper to him soft, broken, final. You'll learn the truth soon enough. The annual Whitford Foundation Winter Gala was exactly the kind of event Caleb lived for. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, champagne towers reaching toward the ceiling, and Manhattan's elite floating through the ballroom like they owned the city. It was a night designed to celebrate him, his promotion, his success, his polished image, but for the first time, Caleb felt out of place. Every laugh around him felt too loud. Every congratulatory handshake felt undeserved. He couldn't stop seeing Harper's face at the hospital, pale and exhausted, or hearing her voice tremble when she said she thought she was losing the baby. His baby. Or was he terrified it might be? Sloane Mercer looped her arm around his, posing them perfectly for photos. Smile, Caleb, she whispered sharply. You look like someone died. He forced a smile, but it felt like a crack splitting across his face. Across the ballroom, Ethan Rowe had just arrived. The moment his name appeared on the guest list, the room shifted. People whispered, pointed subtly, straightened their posture. Ethan wasn't famous, he was powerful. Caleb stiffened when he saw him. He hadn't forgotten the hospital hallway, nor the way Ethan had positioned himself between Harper and him like a shield. What's he doing here? Caleb muttered. Probably scouting donors, Sloane shrugged, adjusting her diamond bracelet. Either that, or trying to prove he's relevant. Honestly, he tries too hard. Caleb frowned, something bitter twisted in his chest. Speaking of irrelevant, Sloane added with a smirk, guess who showed up tonight? Before Caleb could ask, a voice spoke behind him. Caleb. His breath caught. Harper stood at the entrance to the ballroom, wearing a simple, deep blue maternity dress that skimmed her figure softly. She looked fragile, yes, but also composed in a way he hadn't seen before. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her posture steady, her eyes tired but undeniably strong. The room didn't gasp, but something in the air shifted. People noticed her. And so did Sloane. Oh, look. Sloane drawled, stepping forward, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. It's the charity case. Harper froze. Caleb's jaw tightened. Sloane wasn't done. You really should be careful showing up places like this, Harper. People might think you're trying to trap Caleb again. That wouldn't be a good look for someone in your condition. A few guests gasped. Someone whispered, Is that her, the ex-wife? Harper swallowed, her cheeks reddening, but she didn't look away. Caleb felt something inside him snap. Sloane, enough. But Sloane only smirked, savoring the attention. Oh, please. She practically begged for it. Showing up here like she belongs? Look at her dress. Did she get it on sale at a pharmacy? It's embarrassing. Harper's hands trembled at her sides. Caleb stepped forward, torn between guilt and instinct. Then Ethan appeared calm, poised, powerful. He placed a steady hand on Harper's shoulder. You look perfect, he told her softly. The room reacted. Caleb felt heat flash through him. Jealousy, shock, confusion, everything tangled. Ethan turned to Sloane with icy precision. If you ever insult her again, I will personally make sure every sponsor in this room knows exactly how you've been funding your PR campaigns. A ripple swept through the ballroom. Sloane's face drained of color. But Ethan wasn't finished. He looked at Caleb. You should hear what your girlfriend has been hiding from you. Caleb's stomach twisted. What is that supposed to mean? He demanded. Sloane's eyes widened in panic. Ethan, don't. But Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough for only Harper, Caleb, and Sloane to hear. I know what you did, Sloane. And soon, Caleb will too. Caleb stared at her, pulse accelerating. Sloane, what is he talking about? She stuttered. Nothing. He's lying. But Caleb had seen her lie before, and he saw it in her eyes now. Before he could press further, a waiter rushed into the ballroom, scanning the crowd. "Miss Harper Ellington?" he called. Harper turned, startled. "Your mother, she's taken a turn. The hospital needs you immediately." The ballroom spun around her, and Caleb, heart pounding, whispered, "I'm going with you." Snow fell in frantic spirals as Harper Ellington rushed through the sliding doors of Street Mary's Hospital, her breath unsteady, her coat barely clinging to her shoulders. Ethan followed close behind, already on the phone with the nurse's station. Caleb trailed them both, his expression drawn tight with worry and something else, something Harper refused to identify. They reached the elevators. Harper's fingers trembled as she pressed the button. Caleb stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "Harper, is your mother stable?" "She's alive," Harper answered sharply. "That's all that matters." Her tone warned him to stay silent, but Caleb wasn't here for silence, not anymore. "Harper, I need to know something," he said, voice cracking like thin ice. "The boy I saw, the little boy with you in the city." Her shoulders stiffened. "Don't," she whispered. But Caleb couldn't stop. Not now. The doubt had grown too loud. "Who is he?" Harper's jaw tightened so hard she could barely breathe. The elevator dinged. She stepped in, hoping the doors would close before Caleb followed. But he slipped inside at the last second, the doors sealing them together in a metal box humming upward. Caleb's voice lowered to a near plea. "Harper, tell me the truth. Who's the boy?" She stared straight ahead, refusing to give him anything, refusing to let him take one more piece of her. "You forfeited the right to ask me anything," she said coldly. Ethan shifted beside her, stepping subtly forward as if ready to intervene. Caleb's hands curled into fists. "Harper, I deserve to know." "No," she snapped. "You deserve nothing." The words hit him like a physical blow. His chest tightened, breath unsteady. "If he's mine?" Harper finally turned, eyes blazing. "You didn't want him then. You denied him then. You left us then." Her voice trembled with pain she'd buried for years. "You don't get to rewrite history just because you're suddenly curious." Caleb swallowed hard. "I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," she cut in. "You made sure you didn't." The elevator chimed again. They stepped into a dim hallway, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. She moved toward her mother's room, but Caleb followed, desperate. "Harper, please," he whispered. "I need the truth." She spun around, tears shining but refusing to fall. "You want the truth? Fine." In a tree. Caleb's breath caught. "You left me when I needed you most," she said. "You destroyed my reputation. You let your family try to break me. And now you show up what? Expecting me to hand over answers like you earned them?" "Harper, you didn't even ask if the baby survived," she added, voice cracking. "Not once." Caleb's face drained of color. His mouth parted, but no sound came. Ethan placed a steady hand on Harper's back, guiding her gently. "You don't have to explain anything to him. Hate, it's all of his and parents." But Harper wasn't finished. She looked Caleb dead in the eyes. "The boy you saw," she said, "he's someone you chose to walk away from, long before he was even born." Caleb staggered back a step, as if her words had physically shoved him. His voice was a whisper, trembling. "So, he is." Harper inhaled slowly, anchoring herself. "His name is Liam Ellington," she said. "He has my name, my strength, my love. Everything you refused to give." Caleb's eyes glistened, his breathing hitched. "Harper, please, But before he could finish, a doctor rushed toward them. Urgency etched across her face. "Miss Ellington," she said quickly, "we need to discuss your baby. We've found something in the latest scan." Harper froze. And Caleb, for the first time in his life, felt real fear crawl up his spine. "You both need to hear this." The doctor's expression was the kind that made the world tilt professional calm, layered over something urgent and unsettling. Harper's hands instinctively moved to her belly as she followed the doctor into a small consultation room. The fluorescent light flickered once, then steadied, casting a cold glow over the table where several ultrasound images were spread out. Caleb hovered in the doorway, torn between stepping in and keeping his distance. Ethan stayed beside Harper, a steady presence she desperately needed. Miss Ellington, the doctor began gently, your baby is stable for now. His heartbeat is strong. But the stress on your body is affecting the pregnancy more than we'd like. You need rest, real rest, no exertion, no emotional strain. Harper let out a shaky breath, nodding. But Caleb couldn't hold back any longer. Is the baby healthy? He pressed, voice taut. Is he at risk? The doctor hesitated. There are some genetic markers we're monitoring. They're not uncommon, but they can be inherited. Harper frowned. Inherited from who? The doctor looked between Harper and Caleb. There's a chance the father carries the marker, she said. A silence dropped like a stone. Caleb felt heat crawl up his neck. That single word father struck him harder than any accusation Harper had thrown his way. I don't know anything about that, Caleb managed, though the truth was he didn't know anything about his medical history. His family had always been strangely closed about health issues, dodging questions, dismissing concerns. Ethan spoke up calmly. If knowledge of the father's genetics could help Harper's pregnancy, we should find out. Harper stiffened. Caleb stepped forward. I'll get tested, he said quickly. If it helps. Harper's glare cut through him like glass. You don't get to volunteer now, Caleb. It's for the baby, he said. It's 7 years too late. Her voice cracked, the pain raw and unfiltered. But the doctor interrupted gently. Testing would help us rule out several complications. It's your decision, Miss Ellington. Harper's head dropped. She didn't want Caleb involved. She didn't want him anywhere near her life. But the memory of her mother clutching her chest and the fear that she might lose her baby were fears too powerful to ignore. Fine, she whispered. Do the test. Caleb exhaled shakily, as if she'd handed him a lifeline. The doctor stepped out to retrieve forms. Harper leaned forward, covering her face with her hand. I hate this, she whispered. I hate needing anything from him. Ethan sat beside her. This isn't about him. This is about your child. She nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Caleb watched, feeling something unfamiliar twist inside him, guilt so heavy it almost buckled his knees. He hadn't just abandoned her. He'd abandoned them both. When the doctor returned, she handed Caleb a consent form. His hands shook as he signed it. As he passed the paper back, the doctor added, We can expedite the results. You should have a preliminary report within 24 hours. 24 hours. The truth, whatever it was, would finally take shape. Later, as Harper stepped into the hallway, exhausted, Caleb followed her. Harper, he said softly, I need you to know, I didn't see that boy and walk away. I couldn't stop thinking about him. I'm trying now. She turned slowly. Eyes red, voice barely above a whisper. You're only trying because you're terrified he might be yours. Wazan Jacker. Caleb opened his mouth, but no words formed. Harper stepped closer, her voice trembling, not weak, but burning. And Caleb? You should be terrified. Before he could speak, a nurse ran toward them. Miss Ellington, there's an urgent update. You need to come back inside immediately. Harper's heart dropped as the nurse continued. It's about your baby's latest scan, and the father's test results came in early. Lekendo. Harper's legs nearly buckled as the nurse led them back into the consultation room. Caleb followed close behind, pulse hammering. Ethan stayed just behind Harper, silent but protective. The doctor entered with 2 folders, one blue, one white, her expression more serious than before. Miss Ellington, she began. We received an early preliminary result from the paternal genetic screen. Harper's breath caught. Caleb's heart slammed against his ribs. The doctor opened the white folder. The markers we saw in your baby's scan matched those found in the father's profile. It confirms a biological connection. Harper closed her eyes, grief and fury colliding. She had known the truth for years, but hearing it spoken aloud, clinical, undeniable, felt like reopening an old wound. Caleb stared at the folder, unable to breathe. So, he is? Yes, the doctor confirmed softly. Liam is your son. 8, right? If you got tender. Caleb stumbled back a step, hand gripping the chair, as if the world had tilted beneath him. The denial he'd clung to for 7 years shattered like glass. But the doctor wasn't finished. There's more, she said, opening the blue folder. Miss Ellington, your stress levels are dangerously high. Continuous anxiety could trigger complications in your pregnancy. You must avoid all emotional strain, especially conflict. Harper let out a shaky breath. I understand. When fording Potham, Caleb's jaw tightened in guilt. But the room wasn't done shifting. Because just then, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at Harper, and his expression sharpened. "It's about Sloane," he murmured. "You need to hear this." Caleb frowned. "What about her?" Ethan stepped aside, answered the call, listened for several seconds, then returned with a look that chilled both Harper and Caleb. "That anonymous email I mentioned? The one begging me to protect Harper? It didn't come from a stranger." Ethan locked eyes with Caleb. "It came from someone inside your own circle." Caleb's stomach twisted. "Who?" Before Ethan could answer, the nurse from earlier rushed back in, holding a tablet. "Mr. Whitford, this just came through the hospital's media alert system. It concerns you and your fiancé." "My fiancé?" Caleb frowned. "Sloane isn't—" But the nurse turned the screen toward them. A video was playing. Sloane Mercer, standing outside an upscale clinic in Tribeca, speaking to a reporter with a trembling smile. The headline underneath read, "Sloane Mercer reveals she is expecting Caleb Whitford's child." Caleb's blood ran cold. She's not, this is a lie," he sputtered. "She's not pregnant." Harper froze. Ethan's eyes narrowed. The reporter in the video asked, "How far along are you?" Sloane placed a hand dramatically over her stomach. "About 8 weeks," she answered sweetly. "Caleb and I are overjoyed. We've been planning this for a while." Lies. Every word a lie. The nurse added, "Mr. Whitford, there's more. Miss Mercer submitted your insurance information to our maternity department earlier today." Caleb staggered, shaking his head violently. No, she's setting me up. She's trying to control me." And point. Harper's voice trembled, fragile, exhausted, but sharp as ice. "Now you know what it feels like." Caleb swallowed hard. "Harper, I didn't know. I never knew she—" Ethan cut in quietly. "Sloane's been manipulating you for months. And she wasn't the only one." Caleb turned, confused. "What do you mean?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "That anonymous email? It wasn't from some good Samaritan. It wasn't random." Caleb stiffened. "Then who?" he whispered. Ethan handed him his phone. A single email was open, sent from an encrypted address. Subject line, "Protect Harper." Zender, A.V. Caleb's breath caught. A.V. His mother's initials. "No," he whispered. "That can't be. She wouldn't, she couldn't." But deep down Caleb knew. This wasn't Sloane's game alone. His own family had been pulling strings behind his back. Ethan stepped closer, voice low. "She didn't just try to tear Harper down, Caleb. She's been controlling you, too. Daughter, also in daughter." Caleb felt everything inside him collapse. But as the truth broke open around him, the doctor re-entered the room urgently. "Miss Ellington," she said, eyes wide, "we have alarming news from the latest scan." Harper clutched her belly instinctively. The doctor continued, "We need to take you to labor and delivery." Right now, the hallway spun around Harper as nurses rushed her toward labor and delivery. The world became a blur of beeping machines, hurried footsteps, and the sterile scent of antiseptic. She clutched her belly, her breath fractured, her mind screaming the same frantic plea. "Please, baby, please stay with me." Ethan strode beside the gurney, jaw clenched, voice steady as he spoke to the medical team. "She's been under extreme stress. Do whatever you need, she can't lose this child. Viri is of the visit." End quote. Caleb followed several steps behind, pale and shaking, his polished businessman composure shattered. His hands trembled so violently he had to press them against the wall just to steady himself. A nurse turned to Harper as they wheeled her into a monitoring room. "Baby's heart rate is fluctuating. We need you calm. Deep breaths. No panic." But panic was all she had left. Machines were clipped to her abdomen. A rhythmic thump echoed from the monitor, Liam's heartbeat. Unsteady. Fighting. Terrifying. Harper's eyes filled. "I can't lose him. I can't lose him like this." Ethan moved closer, taking her hand firmly. "You won't. I'm right here." Caleb flinched at the sight, his place beside Harper taken by another man, one who actually showed up when it counted. Guilt flooded him like ice water. A doctor entered, scanning the chart. "The baby is reacting to stress. Your body is exhausted. Miss Ellington, if your blood pressure doesn't stabilize, we may have to intervene." T99. Intervene. a word that sent a sharp stab of fear through Harper's chest. Ethan answered before Harper could. "Tell us what you need." "We need calm," the doctor said. "No conflict, no emotional triggers." Her eyes flicked to Caleb pointedly. He felt the accusation land hard. Harper looked at him then, truly looked. Her lips parted, trembling not with softness, but with fury and unbearable hurt. "You don't get to be here," she whispered. "Not like this. Not when the only thing you've ever given us is fear." Caleb's voice cracked. "Harper, please. I never meant—" "Stop," Ethan snapped, stepping between them. "She can't take another shock." Caleb opened his mouth again, but Ethan's glare sharpened like steel. "Either you stay silent," Ethan warned, "or you leave this room." The air thickened. Harper squeezed her eyes shut, trying to slow her breathing. But memories poured in. Caleb walking out, Caleb laughing with Sloane, Caleb denying her pregnancy, Caleb ignoring her suffering. Her pulse spiked. The machine beeped urgently. "Her pressure is rising," a nurse shouted. "We need her calm now." Ethan leaned in, speaking softly. "Harper, listen to me. You're safe. You're not alone. Focus on my voice, okay? Breathe with me." His voice steadied her breathing, rhythm by rhythm, until the spike eased. The baby's heartbeat steadied too, still fragile but stronger. Caleb watched, chest burning. He'd never once been the person who calmed Harper. He'd only ever been the storm. Minutes crawled by until the doctor finally exhaled with relief. "We're stabilizing. But Miss Ellington, this cannot happen again. One more episode of stress like this could endanger the baby." Harper nodded weakly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Caleb stepped closer, voice trembling. "Harper, I swear, I didn't know. If I had known—" She cut him off with a single look. "Knowing wasn't your problem," she whispered. "Caring was." Caleb staggered back as if struck. Before anyone could say another word, the door burst open. A hospital security officer stepped inside, holding a clipboard. "Miss Ellington," he said, "we received a report tonight. Someone attempted to access your medical file without authorization." Harper's breath halted. Caleb froze. Ethan stood straighter, eyes narrowing dangerously. The officer continued. "The person who attempted it was Sloane Mercer." For a long moment, the room froze. The security officer's words hung in the air like a blade suspended over Harper's world. "Sloane Mercer attempted to access your medical file." Harper felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine. After everything, after the humiliation, after the threats, after the lies, Sloane had invaded the one place Harper should have been safe. Ethan was the first to speak. "What reason would she have," he asked, voice low and dangerous, "to dig into Harper's medical records?" The officer didn't flinch. She claimed she needed confirmation for an ongoing family matter. But the access attempt was flagged immediately. She also tried to view the prenatal files. Harper's breath stuttered. Caleb's face drained of color. "No," Caleb whispered. "She wouldn't, she couldn't." But even he didn't believe his own words. Ethan stepped forward, shoulders squared, every inch the powerhouse executive people feared. "This is a criminal offense. Harper, you can press charges immediately." Harper wanted to speak, but her throat tightened. Too much had happened, too fast, too heavy. Her body trembled under the weight of fear and exhaustion, the baby shifting inside her as if sensing her distress. Caleb suddenly erupted. "Where is she?" he snapped, voice cracking. "Where the hell is Sloane?" The officer answered. "She was escorted out of the hospital a few minutes ago after causing a scene in the lobby." "A scene?" Ethan repeated sharply. "Oh yes," the officer replied. "She was screaming that Miss Ellington was stealing her life and that the baby should have been hers." Harper gasped softly, nausea rising. Ethan steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "But Caleb?" Caleb nearly collapsed. She said, "What?" The officer continued, flipping the clipboard. She also shouted that she had proof Harper was lying, but when staff asked her to show it, she refused. She then attempted again to access the hospital system through a nurse's workstation. Caleb pressed a hand to his face, shaking. "Oh my God, she's lost it." "No," Ethan corrected coldly. "She never had it." Harper closed her eyes, gripping the blanket across her lap. She hated that her life, her motherhood, had become a battlefield for other people's manipulation. The officer handed Harper a form. "Ma'am, you can file the report whenever you're ready. We just needed to notify you." After he left, silence settled again. Caleb finally spoke, voice hollow. Harper, I didn't know she was capable of this. I swear to you, I didn't. Harper looked at him with exhaustion so deep it bordered on numb. You didn't know anything. Not about me. Not about your son. Not about the woman you trusted to replace us. Caleb winced. Ethan stepped between them once more. Harper doesn't need apologies. She needs protection and stability, something you've never provided. This time, Caleb didn't argue. He sank into the chair beside the monitor, running a hand through his hair. I don't understand how everything got so twisted. Ethan's eyes hardened. Because you let your family and Sloan make you blind. Heather, Tezer. Harper turned away, tears forming but refusing to fall. Before she could respond, a soft knock sounded on the door. A nurse stepped in holding a manila envelope. This came through internal courier. It's from Miss Ellington. Ethan took it, examined the seal, then handed it to Harper carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A bank transaction record. A large payment from Whitford Family Trust to Sloan Mercer. The date? 3 days before Caleb filed for divorce. Harper's world lurched. Caleb stared horrified. That's impossible. My family wouldn't. But he stopped. Because deep down, he knew they would. Before he could speak, the nurse rushed back in. Miss Ellington, your baby's heart rate is escalating again. We need to move you immediately. Harper's breath caught, and Caleb, terrified beyond words, whispered, Please, don't let me lose my son again. Harper Ellington lay in the dim hospital room, monitors pulsing steadily beside her. After hours of emergency observation, her baby's heartbeat had finally stabilized. She wasn't out of danger, but for the first time in days, she could breathe without fear slicing through her chest. Ethan sat near the door, flipping through paperwork the hospital had given them. Caleb stood by the window, shoulders hunched, staring out at the snow-covered city below as if it held answers to a life he no longer understood. Harper stared at the ceiling, her fingers resting over her belly. She had been pushed, threatened, betrayed, and humiliated. But she had survived every single blow. And now, something inside her had changed permanently. When she finally sat up, her voice was steady. I want legal counsel. Ethan looked up immediately. I can call the firm we work with. They're excellent and discreet. Caleb turned, startled. Harper, wait, legal counsel for what? For everything, she replied calmly. For the threats from your family, for Sloan's crimes, and for my son's future. The word son made Caleb flinch. Harper continued, her voice firm. I will not be intimidated anymore. I will not be cornered, and I will not let anyone decide my life for me ever again. Ethan's expression softened, full of respect. Then we'll get everything in motion. Caleb stepped closer, desperation leaking into his voice. Harper, please. I'm not your enemy. But... And one. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man who once promised her the world, but the man who abandoned her to carry it alone. No, she said softly. But you weren't my ally either. He exhaled shakily. I know, and I'm trying. You're trying now, Harper interrupted, because the truth caught up with you, not because you chose to do what was right. That silenced him. A nurse entered to run another check on Harper's vitals. She listened to the heartbeat, made notes, and smiled gently. Your baby is strong, she said, stronger than most. He wants to stay. Harper's chest tightened with emotion. So do I. When the nurse left, Harper reached for the folder, documenting the payment from the Whitford Family Trust to Sloan. She held it up between her fingers. This, she said, is enough to start a case. And I intend to. Caleb's eyes widened. Harper, my family didn't tell me. Your family has never told you anything, she replied. That's the problem. Ethan stood, adjusting his coat. I'll call the firm. You'll meet with them tomorrow morning. Harper nodded. And I want full custody, paperwork drawn. I don't want Caleb's family anywhere near my child. Caleb's face tightened. Harper, please let me be part of his life. She shook her head. You had 7 years to want that. He closed his eyes, swallowing the pain. Harper pressed on. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it because my son deserves stability, safety, love. And he will get all 3 from me. Ethan watched her with quiet pride. For the first time since he met her, Harper wasn't bracing for the world to break her. She was ready to confront it head on. Harper, Caleb whispered, voice thick, please, don't shut me out. She lifted her chin. I'm not shutting you out, Caleb. I'm protecting my son from the people who hurt us. Thanks for watching. 2000. And then she added, firmly, and that includes you. Caleb looked like he had been punched. Before either man could respond, Harper's phone buzzed on the bedside table. She reached for it, frowning. A text. From an unknown number, a single sentence. And when she read it, her face drained of color. If you think the Whitfords are done with you, you're wrong. The next morning, Harper Ellington stepped out of the hospital with a slow, steady breath. The winter air bit at her cheeks, but she didn't flinch. Something in her had shifted overnight, her spine straighter, her gaze clearer, her fear dissolved into purpose. Ethan walked beside her, ready to escort her to the law firm he had contacted. Caleb followed a few steps behind, unsure if he was welcome but unable to walk away. As they approached the sidewalk, Ethan's driver opened the door of a sleek Mercedes. Harper hesitated for a moment, not because of the car, but because she felt the weight of stepping into a new chapter of her life. She finally climbed in. Caleb lingered outside, rubbing his temples. He had barely slept, replaying every cruel word he'd said, every moment he'd abandoned her. The DNA confirmation had torn apart the convenient lie he'd lived in for 7 years. His world was crumbling, and he knew it. Halfway to the firm, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced down and frowned. "What is it?" Harper asked. Ethan turned the screen toward her. A news headline flashed across it. Whitford family under investigation for illegal payoffs and corporate manipulation. Caleb froze. Harper's breath caught. Ethan read it aloud quietly. Sources confirm the Whitford Family Trust made undisclosed payments to individuals connected to Caleb Whitford's marriage dissolution. He stopped, glancing at Harper with a look that said, "This is only the beginning." Caleb sank into the opposite seat, face draining of color. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Harper, I didn't know they did this." Harper didn't answer immediately. She was staring out the window, absorbing the magnitude of what she had just heard. Her suffering hadn't been an accident, it had been engineered. But she wasn't breaking this time. "We keep moving forward," she said, her voice steady. "Whatever happens to the Whitfords isn't my burden anymore." When they arrived at the downtown law firm, Harper was ushered into a private boardroom. A team of attorneys greeted her with polite professionalism. They already had a binder prepared, tabs labeled medical violations, defamation, financial coercion, harassment, custody protections. Harper swallowed a lump in her throat. "This is a lot." "It's what you're entitled to," the lead attorney said. "Your rights were violated repeatedly. And now, with the Whitford investigation going public, your leverage is substantial." For the first time, Harper didn't feel like prey. She felt like someone holding a sword she never knew she had permission to wield. Caleb sat quietly in the corner, shame pressing on him like a weight. When the attorneys stepped out to gather additional documents, he finally spoke. "I'm losing everything," he murmured. "The firm suspended me this morning. Sloane's lies, my mother's involvement, it's all coming out." Harper didn't gloat. She simply said, "Actions have consequences, Caleb." He looked up, eyes red. "I don't want to lose my son." Harper inhaled slowly. "Then you should have thought about him before denying he existed." Ethan watched the exchange with cool attentiveness. He admired Harper's calm. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't vindictive. She was controlled, powerful. A knock interrupted. An assistant entered, holding a new report. "For Miss Ellington," she said. Harper opened the folder and her eyes widened. It wasn't about the Whitfords. It was about Liam. The hospital had completed his updated prenatal analysis. Ethan leaned closer. "Harper? What is it?" Her fingers trembled as she read the final line. Caleb stood, alarmed. "What does it say?" Harper looked up slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've found a potential complication, and Liam may need a specialized surgery right after birth." Then she added, breath shaking, "And only one hospital in the country performs it." The room fell into stunned silence as Harper Ellington reread the medical report. Though her hands trembled, her face remained composed, too composed, the way people become when fear hardens into determination. Ethan leaned beside her. "Harper, we'll get you whatever specialist you need. Cost isn't an obstacle." Caleb, visibly shaken, stepped closer. "What does this mean? What surgery? What complication?" Harper lifted her eyes to him, steady and unflinching. Liam may have a congenital heart defect. They need to operate immediately after he's born. The sooner, the better. Caleb's breath hitched. There has to be something we can do. There is, Harper said, but it's expensive. And the only hospital capable of doing it is in Boston. Ethan nodded. Mass General, one of the best pediatric cardiac units in the country. They usually accept only high-priority cases. Caleb ran a shaking hand through his hair. I'll pay, whatever it costs. Harper gave a small, bitter smile. With what money, Caleb? Your accounts are frozen, pending the investigation. Your promotion is gone. Your fiancé fabricated a pregnancy, and your family is being audited. Caleb flinched hard. Ethan added quietly, Harper doesn't need money. She needs reliability. Have we? Caleb's voice cracked. I can be that. I can step up now. Let me. Harper inhaled softly, choosing her words with precision. You can't step up when the ground beneath you is collapsing. The attorneys returned to finalize the custody documents. Harper signed confidently, no hesitation in her pen strokes. Caleb hesitated when the papers were handed to him. Full custody, he whispered. You're really doing this. Harper didn't look away. Liam will grow up in peace. He will not be used, threatened, or controlled by the Whitford family. Caleb swallowed. And me? You can petition for visitation, she said quietly, but only after you prove you can protect him from them. Right now, you can't. Those words broke him more than anger ever could. By afternoon, Harper was discharged under strict bed rest orders. Ethan arranged everything: private transport to her apartment, meal services, a nurse to check her blood pressure twice a day. Harper tried to protest, but Ethan silenced each argument with calm logic. This isn't charity, he said softly. It's support. And you deserve that. When they arrived at her building, reporters swarmed the entrance flashes, microphones, questions exploding all around them. Ms. Ellington, is it true the Whitfords paid to sabotage your marriage? Is the baby's father stepping in now? Did Sloan Mercer try to steal your medical records? Ethan shielded Harper with his coat, guiding her firmly through the chaos. Caleb pushed back reporters, shouting for space, but all he did was worsen the frenzy. Inside the lobby, Harper finally exhaled. I can't bring a baby into this, she whispered. Ethan touched her shoulder gently. You won't face it alone. It's quarter. But Caleb stepped forward, desperation tightening his voice. Harper, tell me what I can do. Please. Harper turned to him, calm, tired, resolute. Fix what you broke, she said. Stop your family. End their threats. Clear the mess you let them create. Caleb nodded, emotion shaking him. I will. I swear to you I will. Harper didn't reply. She simply walked into the elevator with Ethan, leaving Caleb standing in the lobby, staring at the destruction his silence had caused. Hours later, as Harper rested in her bed, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Hands trembling, she opened the message. It wasn't a threat this time. It was a photo. A blurry image of a door, the Whitford estate back entrance. Underneath, a single line. Tonight, everything changes. Be ready. Harper's blood ran cold. Ethan knocked on her door a moment later. Harper, you okay? She slowly turned the screen toward him. Ethan's eyes darkened. Because the message wasn't just ominous. It was a warning. And the night wasn't over yet. The message lingered on Harper's phone, like a final warning from the universe. Tonight, everything changes. The blurry photo of the Whitford estate's back entrance pulsed in her mind as Ethan contacted security and insisted on staying with her through the night. Caleb, upon learning of the message, rushed to the apartment as well, but Harper refused to see him. This is the result of everything you ignored, she told him through the door. Fix it from the outside. And this time, Caleb didn't argue. He left the apartment building with a look of grim determination. Hours passed. Harper tried to sleep but couldn't. Ethan stayed awake on the couch, alert, listening for every sound. Just past 2 a.m., a thunderous banging echoed through the hallway, followed by frantic voices. Ethan was at Harper's door instantly. A security officer called out, "It's over. Miss Mercer has been detained." Harper's breath caught. Sloan had been found at the Whitford estate, attempting to steal documents she believed would expose Harper once and for all. Instead, she was caught on camera admitting to forging paperwork, faking her pregnancy and conspiring with Caleb's mother to destroy Harper's credibility. It was done. Their lies had collapsed under their own weight. But the adrenaline hit Harper too hard. A sharp pain ripped through her abdomen. She gasped, grabbing Ethan's arm. "Ethan, something's wrong. The baby." Her water broke. Chaos erupted. Within minutes, she was in an ambulance racing through Manhattan toward the hospital. Ethan held her hand, grounding her through each contraction. Harper cried through the pain not from fear, but from a ferocious, desperate love. "Stay with me, Liam," she whispered. "Just stay." At the hospital, doctors rushed her into delivery. The congenital heart defect meant the baby needed immediate intervention. Harper pushed through every contraction, with tears streaming down her cheeks. When Liam's cry finally filled the room, Harper sobbed with relief, but she barely held him for a second before the NICU team swept him away for emergency treatment. Hours later, Harper lay exhausted but awake as Ethan returned from the NICU with a soft smile. "He's stable," Ethan said. "He's small, but he's strong. He's fighting." End quote. Harper pressed her hands to her face, overcome. Before she could speak, a shadow appeared in the doorway, Caleb. But this time, he didn't step inside. He stood respectfully at the threshold. "Harper." His voice broke. "I ended it. All of it. I turned over every email, every payment record, every message. My mother has been removed from the trust. Sloan confessed everything. It's done." Harper looked at him, not with anger, not with love, but with a quiet, resolute finality. "You did what you should have done years ago." He nodded, tears burning in his eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness, but thank you for giving me a son. I will spend the rest of my life proving to him that I can be a better man." Harper held his gaze for a long moment, then gave a single nod, not acceptance, but closure. Caleb swallowed hard. "May I see him?" "Not today," Harper whispered gently. "But one day, maybe." And for the first time, Caleb understood what it meant to wait. When he left, Ethan stepped inside, carrying a small blanket from the NICU. "There's someone who wants to meet his mom," he said softly. A nurse brought Liam in tiny, bundled, fighting, beautiful. Harper held him against her chest, tears slipping silently down her face as he curled into her warmth. Ethan watched her strength, resilience, grace, and something deep in his expression shifted. "Harper," he said quietly, "I know today isn't about anything but your son, but when you're ready, I'd like to be part of your future. Not to replace anything, but to build something new." Harper looked up, heart full for the first time in years. She whispered, "Maybe we can." Outside the window, the sun lifted over Manhattan, warm, golden, new. Justice served. A child saved. A woman reborn. And Harper Ellington finally stepped into the life she deserved. So, that's where our story closes, my wonderful friends. And if you're still here, still listening all the way to this moment, then something in Harper's journey must have touched your heart in a way only real pain and real healing can. You know, life has a strange way of testing us in seasons we never asked for. But as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Harper's strength didn't come from a perfect life. It came from surviving the storms meant to break her. Maybe you've walked through storms of your own. Maybe you've carried wounds no one ever apologized for. And maybe, just like Harper, you're still learning that you don't have to be crushed by the things that tried to destroy you. If this story reminded you of your own strength, if it made you feel seen, even just a little, then don't leave without showing some love. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who might need it, and don't forget to subscribe so you never walk through these stories alone. We're here, together, and your healing journey matters.